What is your I saw celebrity in public story? I saw Shaquille O'Neal standing outside my store. I'm a 6 foot tall woman and I told him I've always wanted a hug from someone bigger than me. He gave me a big ol' bear hug, lifted me off the ground, and said it's nice to meet you. Double quote. Shaq loves his fans. That's really funny and nice that he did that. Bradley Cooper was outside of the Natural History Museum and told my little brother that he had nice sunglasses. I also met Raven Simone when I was like 6. She was filming that movie that I never actually saw about a road trip or something lol. I think I had a crush on her. While in Vegas 8+ years back, as I was headed into the Hard Rock, I ran into Owen Wilson walking out. I fist bumped him and said, "Hey Owen, love your movies, man. Funny stuff." He gave me a kind of rude, "Yay thanks" back. Didn't think much of it, probably got that all the time. I later found out it was Luke Wilson. Hahaha, dude, they look totally different. I stopped James Earl Jones in the Atlanta airport in the mid-90s. He looked annoyed until I asked him to say mellifluous. Then he burst out laughing and walked away. I sat next to Jean-Claude Van Damme on a plane once. I was like 9 or 10 and flying by myself for the first time, so they put me up in an empty seat in first class next to him. He was really nice. He talked to me and helped me build the little Lego set that my mom had gotten me for the trip. I didn't know who he was until after I got off the plane and I heard some of the gate people talking about it. He was a pretty cool dude. Didn't roundhouse kick me even once. Didn't roundhouse kick me even once. What a shame. Saw Bruce Campbell in a Toys R Us once. I didn't want to bother him, but I'm a big fan and couldn't resist. So I went over to him and said, "Mr. Campbell, BC, yeah, me, I really like your work. Thanks for doing it. BC, oh, hey, thanks, me, sure, I mean, no, thank you. BC, me, thanks," walks away, feeling like giant tool. He was perusing the selection of G.I. Joes. Should have told him to shop smart. Shop smart. Maybe keep the awkwardness going by muttering boomstick as you walk away. Was waiting tables 4 years ago. Terry Crews and his family are at one of mine. Just went about myself as I normally would. Terry was a class act. Also, his wife was probably one of the nicest people. 10/10 would recommend. Terry Crews seems like an awesome guy. I loved him and everybody hates Chris. Ran into Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Starbucks when he was governor. Wanted to take a picture but his security detail told me no pictures. Walked up to him and said something stupid like "time for a little pick me up." He shook his hand after we got our coffees. If I ever saw him, I would say, "Your clothes. Give them to me, now." I peed in the urinal next to Ray Romano at a Mets playoff game in 2006. Everyone walked by and slapped him on the back and tried getting high fives. I could tell he was annoyed and just wanted to use the bathroom. And yeah, I obviously took a peek. Saw Steve Wozniak pushing a cart around inside a Costco. He shopped for at least 15 minutes while people continually asked each other if that was really him. Very surreal. I read about Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard shopping in Costco and thought it was really weird, so it's funny to hear about another celebrity doing it too, lol. I used to work at a running store in Brooklyn and sold Peter Sarsgaard running shoes. He gave his name for the loyalty points or whatever, and when I typed it in I was like, "How your name sounds so familiar. Where have I heard that before? I dunno. I run a lot. We've probably met. Oh okay. Well, enjoy the shoes." When he walked out, my co-workers filled me in. "Whoops. Sorry I didn't recognize you, bud. You gave the gift of not knowing who that person was and I bet they absolutely loved it." Saw Sir Anthony Hopkins at a gas station in Dallas. I held the door for him and said, "I enjoy your work." He looked at me and winked, and then went inside. I went to my car and knew that none of my friends would believe me. It would have been amazing if he'd done that hiss thing from Silence of the Lambs at you. Saw Robin Williams whilst at Universal. We were waiting in line for one of the roller coasters and they said we have to hold for a VIP to have a ride. Robin Williams came out a few minutes later with his family. My wife's grandmother, a huge fan. Called out, "Hope you're having a nice vacation, Mr. Williams." He stopped and tipped his cap to her and replied, "Thank you kindly, mom." Then grandma giggled like a schoolgirl. It was adorable. She talked about that encounter for the rest of her life. Then grandma giggled like a schoolgirl. It was adorable. That is truly precious. I am so happy she had that experience to remember. One time I pee off Scarlett Johansson, accidentally. They were filming Nanny Diaries in front of my work in Treeby car. Not realizing they were in the middle of the shot, I walked outside and lit a cigarette. Then realized they were filming. They call cut. Scarlett looks over at me with a glare. I nervously smiled and waved. She shot me the most pee off look I've ever seen. The DP or location manager or someone then ran over to me and was like, "Can you please go around the corner?" I apologized, but all they wanted was me out of the shot. Next time this happens, you look her dead in the eye and say, "This is New York. No one gives a frick about your crappy movie." I guarded Barry Sanders in a pickup basketball game at my college, the summer before his 2,000-yard season. Didn't know it was him until after. At one point he shot a 3 and landed on my foot, so I held out my hand for him to grab and avoid twisting his ankle. So I've got that going for me. Dude, I'm sure all of Detroit thanks you. Robin Williams held a future shop door open for me in Vancouver. I ended up walking the same direction as him for about 4 blocks. I couldn't get over how short and hairy he was. I saw Peter Capaldi at my graduation. He was really nice. Took a few pics with me. When I look back on it, I feel like I came across a little creepy as I am a pretty big Doctor Who fan, so as you can imagine, the fanboy in me was working full time. But he was really nice. Told him he was my favorite Doctor, and he asked me what I was graduating in. I said history and he said, "Oh, I know a thing or two about that," with a laugh. Pretty great guy. Gonna miss him when he regenerates. I don't think he would have minded much. From what I hear, he is a bit of a fan himself. When I was 5, I met Shaq in a Build-A-Bear workshop. I had no idea who he was, but my dad is a die-hard Heat fan and we went in pretending to build a bear so we could meet him. He was incredibly nice and enjoyed taking pictures with kids because of the size difference, and I got to build a bear. Win-win. I have a similar no idea it was Shaq's story. When I was little, my dad used to manage the PMAC, where LSU basketball is played. One time, he brought me down on the floor when they were wrapping up practice and Shaq picked me up and held me. Apparently 4-year-old me was not fond of giants picking me up. One Christmas Eve, I was heading all over the city to find these red boots that my then girlfriend wanted, but all the stores were out. I'd been running around Manhattan and after a few hours I was exhausted. In Soho by the art train on Prince, I paused, backed up to the wall so as to not block the sidewalk, lit a cigarette and looked to my left. Next to me stood Kate Beckinsale, equally as exhausted, arms full of shopping bags, and we made eye contact. She looked up at me and her expression just seemed to beg, "Please do not be a fan. I am just out shopping and I'm exhausted. Please don't recognize me. Please do not be a fan." I finished my smoke and back on the train. Of course I wasn't going to bother you, Ms. Beckinsale. Merry Christmas. I saw the McMahons of WWF fame at a movie theater. They were all supposed to be feuding at the time, but they seemed to be getting along just fine. I kissed Triple H in a Walmart. My mom still has the picture. Me and a buddy were in a bar after a Monday Nitro in the late 90s. I had just turned 20 and luckily didn't get carded. About a half hour after we get there, wrestlers start showing up. Ric Flair walks in with his entourage and is standing right next to my table and I am freaking out. I couldn't think of anything to say except woo. Ric Flair turns and looks at me and says, "Shut the frick up, kid." Ric Flair is a national treasure. Don't have a catchphrase if you don't want people quoting it. Saw Natalie Dormer slowly walk right past me at my quiet hometown supermarket. I could almost make out an aura around her. She was a vision. I worked a few photo shoots and video projects with her. Vision is correct. She's stunning, but also just incredibly pleasant to everyone. Well put together and interesting to chat with. I've worked with enough celebrities that I don't get starstruck, but good god, she certainly stands out. I met Brent Hines of Mastodon before a show in 2009. He saw my tattoo sleeve of the Leviathan album's artwork and bought me a beer and we shot the crap for about an hour. One time I saw The Undertaker in the Charlotte airport. It did not go well. As my plane landed and we started deboarding, I noticed a rather large, red-headed man at the front of the airplane and my first thought was the guy looks like The Undertaker. Being a huge wrestling fan, I wanted to go up and introduce myself, but I was stuck all the way in the back of the plane. As I patiently waited my turn to get off the plane, I began to doubt if it actually was The Undertaker. What were the odds? I thought. I had to find out for sure. So as soon as I hit the terminal, I began to sprint hoping to at least catch another glimpse of the dead man. He was nowhere in sight though, so I began to trudge my way toward baggage claim. On my way, I passed a Harley Davidson store. Knowing how big of a motorcycle fan he was, I poked my head into the store. Well, it didn't take long to spot the nearly 7-footer admiring one of the giant bikes on display. I slowly approached him, still not 100% this was really The Undertaker or not. It's not like he wears his trademark black hat, duster, and eyeshadow out in public. Nonetheless, I was completely paralyzed, starstruck, marking out, whatever you want to call it. Somehow I worked up the courage to stammer out, "Excuse me, sir, I'm a huge wrestling fan. Are you by any chance The Undertaker?" And this larger-than-life childhood hero of mine simply leaned over, stared me right in the face and muttered, "What the frick do you think?" Greatest moment of my life. Man, I really thought this was going to end with heck in a cell. Tilda Swinton was on a panel at a film festival at my university several years ago when I was in grad school. A friend and I spotted her on campus and I took a picture of her and my friend together. She was very nice and was not put out by taking a picture with a fan, even at a late hour. I stood next to her at a concert and she was so regal, like a real-life elven queen. I was 15. Walked out of a bookstore in Boulder, CO, and there was Jimmy Page taking a walk. Talked to him for about 5 minutes. 0. I went to Disney when I was in 3rd grade and I saw Hulk Hogan riding the Dumbo ride with a little girl. Turns out that they were filming an episode of Thunder in Paradise. After that, I noticed that they would frequently use Disney locations in the series, even going as far to use the Epcot England location for an episode when they had to go overseas. I was at a petting zoo pumpkin patch just before Halloween. The little 3-year-old I nanny is terrified of animals, so I was trying to show him that the Shetland pony wouldn't hurt him. A little girl stood next to me, so I showed her how to hold her hand flat so the pony would sniff her. I look up at her dad and realized it was Macklemore. Didn't say much to him since I figured he just wanted a nice day with his kid. He seems like a good dude and his daughter is very sweet. I was doing a charity walk and Penn Jillette was there with his daughter. Penn and I used to frequent the same cafe all the time, so seeing him was not a big deal, but what stuck with me during this encounter was people kept coming up to him and talking to him, telling him how awesome he was and blah blah. All of them not even acknowledging that his daughter was even there. After a while she tugs on his arm and said, "I'm important too." He grabs her and put her up on his shoulders and she gets this big smile on her face. It was a really beautiful moment. Penn and Teller stand outside in the lobby after every one of their shows and takes the time to take pictures, sign autographs, and chat with every single member of the audience, and before anyone asks, yes, Teller will absolutely talk with you when he isn't in character. They are a class act all the way and without a doubt the best show in Vegas. I ran into Alice Cooper in the meat section of a grocery store in Phoenix. I said hi, he smiled and said hi. We both bought meat. I was in Central Park around 2-3 weeks ago and Drew Barrymore and her kids and dogs were next to me, but they accidentally threw a tennis ball at my head. She apologized. I accepted said apology and then I pet her dog. It was cool. You pet Drew Barrymore's dog? She has pet that dog. She seems amazing. Was at my local pub for weekly trivia, and Brendan Frazier came in by himself for a few pints. Kept to himself with headphones and a notebook. Guy nodded as we made eye contact when he got up to leave. You'll be worshipped for that at our Sava, Brendan. A few years ago I was waiting tables in a Thai place in a small town in Vermont. It was slow and so I was doing side work in the other server section, which was occupied by one party of 5. As I walked past their table to go to the kitchen I noticed one of the members of the party and thought to myself, hey, that hot old guy looks like Mandy Patinkin, Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. Why would he be here though? A bit later I walked by again, trying to discreetly get a better look. Of course, being the person that I am, I tripped over a fan. So much for discretion. At this point, the guy asked me if I might be able to get him some more tea. I said of course and then said something like okay, this is a really stupid question, and I'm sure the answer's no, but I won't ever forgive myself if I don't ask. Are you Mandy Patinkin? To my surprise he replied with yes. Actually, I am. I then proceeded to blurt out the first stupid thing that came to mind, which was I've been in love with you since I was 3. Mandy, God love him, gave me the warmest smile I've ever seen and said I'm so glad we're finally getting the chance to meet. I then brought him more tea and geeked out in the back so he could enjoy his dinner. Caught a selfie with him before he left though. TLDR, met Inigo Montoya, made an butt of myself. He was really cool about it. I fell in love with him when I heard him sing and Dong Tracy didn't see Princess Bride until years later. Tried to convince my choir teacher to sing the duet he did with Madonna. He also made watching Elmer Goes to Grouchland much easier to watch over and over and over when I had kids. I love you, Mr. Patinkin. Your voice is like liquid gold. Not exciting, but I saw Hank Azaria in NYC. My husband, stepdaughter and I were walking down the sidewalk when 3 guys stepped out of a building about 20 feet in front of us. I never thought I'd be the type to get starstruck, but I stopped dead in my tracks and kept mumbling it's Hank Azaria. My husband had to say what like 3 times, and then he figured out what I was saying. I wanted to say something to him so much but he was out with people and I didn't want to interrupt. If you read this, I love you Hank. I literally ran into him on the street and in Manhattan last year. I had no idea why I recognized him. Thought it was a professor at my college that I couldn't place until we were a few blocks away and then it took me forever to remember his name. I just kept thinking Phoebe's boyfriend from Friends. Times Square in 215. I was heading south and Kevin Spacey passed me. We made eye contact. He must have known I recognized him because he winked at me and made the SSSHHH finger to the nose gesture. Was cool at the time. I worked in the same building as some small branch of iTunes. One day, I was leaving the office and I looked into a parked Escalade and saw Nelly Furtado. I called my co-workers but told them to play it cool. My co-worker came flying through the doors like the Kool-Aid Man. He made it so obvious that she laughed in the car. I was so humiliated. I was having dinner in a small town in Colorado and just happened to run into Adam Savage from Mythbusters because they were up there filming. Really nice guy. 10/10 would meet again. I've told this before but in 2005 when I was 19 and had a really bad stutter, I met Green Day. Trecool pointed and laughed in my face, mimicked my stutter, said freak out much and just walked off when I tried to talk to him. Cut to 2014. Green Day again in town. A friend and I decide to go bowling. Walk into bowling alley on street I live in and are completely surprised to discover Green Day are in their bowling. I walk up to bar to get a drink. Trecool also walks up to bar and says hi to me. I think frick it and say hi. You know I met you a decade ago when I had a bad stutter and you mocked me for it. So check it out. No stutter now. He apologized and said that he knows he was a dong back then. He probably thought I was so in awe of him that I couldn't talk. Apologized several times and gave me an AAA pass for the gig the next day and said come hang out tomorrow so I can prove I'm not an So yeah, well and truly accepted that apology and no longer think the guy is a dickhead. I bowled next to Kid Rock and James King, a model he was dating. Once, we asked if we could take a picture. She said no. I said, no, I'm asking you to take a picture of me and my friend. I don't want a picture of you. I was super drunk, so I thought that was clever. Kid Rock laughed and told us to get the frick out of there. 3 stories for this one. I was in Paris on my honeymoon and walked into the lobby of the hotel. Standing in front of me at the front desk was Sting. He was there for an event that he was singing at for a major oil company. Said my hello. Quick handshake on back on my way upstairs. Got to listen to the set until about 2 AM that night from the comfort of our hotel room. Second is not so much a celebrity as he is an entertainer. Was at a deadmau5 concert with some people. Stepped outside to have a smoke in the back corner of the smoking area. Couple people walk out of the RVs that were there and I get a hey, how's it going look up and go through the normal not too bad. Just waiting to head back in and enjoy the show. First time being at one of these and it is a little overwhelming with all of the people. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I have to run though. Have to go and get ready. Have a good night. Everyone starts going ape crap in the smoking area and crowding around me. Took me a second to notice the giant Space Invaders tattoo on his neck. Last one was kind of a fluke, but was driving in my buddy's car in Michigan. Pulled up to a stoplight, looked over and saw a silver Mustang next to us. Windows were down and I glance over and see Eminem staring at us. Gave my buddy a blank look, looked back, got a quick nod and hey what's up. Blank stares still ensuing. He laughs and took off. Eminem was staring because you probably had vomit on your sweater already. 2 days ago I was helping a guy and his female friend figure out an electronic parking meter. Wasn't until we figured it out that I looked up and realized his friend was Miley Cyrus. Bill Nye stood next to me on the Jubilee line, twice, and then he went to my mother's shop in Liverpool Street. I am now very suspicious of Bill Nye. I love how distinctly British this is. I had to Google Bill Nye and Jubilee line, and I learned that I already knew who Bill Nye was. Productive day. I saw Julianne Moore with her family at Big Gay Ice Cream in NYC one time. In New York we don't really make a big deal out of the celebrity thing through, so I kind of just gave her a head nod and she smiled at me. I adore her. The fact that she smiled back at your head nod made me so happy. Not me, but my dad met George Lucas at a work function after a business trip flight and the jet lag was getting to him. For context, my dad is a huge Star Wars fan, but he was so tired and when he shook George Lucas' hand, he said, "I love your work. Star Trek is one of my favorite series." George Lucas was surprisingly forgiving and said, "Oh, man. Do you mean Star Wars?" My dad said he apologized profusely and said that was his most embarrassing moment in life. I saw Kimbo Slice outside of a bar in downtown Wilmington, NC one night. The bar was having a fight night and Kimbo was just part of the audience. I once saw Scott Bakula in a Rite Aid parking lot yelling at his manager or agent on the phone. He was very not happy. We walked by Michael Rappaport outside a bar in LA, and he just looked at my friend when we were staring and said, "Yeah, it's me. What the frick you looking at?" It was peak Rappaport. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.